And we're back with the Shacknews Awards 2023. You know, the Shacknews Awards, we try to adapt and evolve over time, right? You know, this year we made our nominees public for the first time. And yeah, we're open to adaptations. We also have a show here on our Twitch channel called Pop Goes the Culture, where each week Donovan and Greg will break down what's going on outside of the world of video games and the world of entertainment, mainly film and television. So this is the Pop Goes the Culture presents Best Adaptation of the Year 2023. Here are the nominees: The Last of Us, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Castlevania Nocturne, Five Nights at Freddy's, Twisted Metal, and Tetris. Now, some of these are TV shows and some of these are movies, which I think will make it a little more difficult to compare these. Maybe down the road we could break them into separate categories, even, because I think comparing film and TV is kind of tough on an apples to apples basis. But we haven't thought into the future that far yet. So here we are. Uh, Donovan, would you like to talk about The Last of Us adaptation?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, Naughty Dog teamed up with HBO to adapt The Last of Us, the story of the first game. And I think as soon as we saw that this was going to be an HBO thing, we knew it was in good hands. Neil Druckmann had his hands all over this. Craig Mazin was a writer and showrunner on it, and he did Chernobyl. He's written a bunch of stuff. He's an excellent TV writer specifically. And I think that the entire first season of The Last of Us is a great retelling of that story. I think it makes it um, very palatable for people who don't play games because I think that the narrative is the strongest part about The Last of Us. Uh, Most games, that's not the case. So I think it's a game that was really ripe to be adapted. I know so many people who don't touch video games who watched The Last of Us, who enjoyed it, who now know who Ellie and Joel are, and they know about like the cordyceps and all that. I think Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are excellent as Joel and Ellie. The show gives more shades. The parts of the game doesn't even really talk about all that much. Like Joel's daughter, we get an entire episode where we dive into her story and learn more about her as a character, which just kind of adds to the tragedy of the inciting events of that show and that story. We learn more about like the actual cordyceps outbreak, which again is like in the game, it's kind of glossed over. You read like notes on tables and labs about it, but they show you like the outbreak in different parts of the world and how like scientists were looking at this and watching it happen in real time. It's very kind of haunting. It adds to the horror aspect of it, I think. And then I think the true crowning achievement of the Last of Us television show is the third episode. It's called Long Long Time, and it's about Bill and Frank, who are two characters that appear in the games. Really, Bill's the one that appears. Frank's more so alluded to, but even Bill is just featured very briefly in that first The Last of Us game. And boy, they took that character and ran a marathon with him in that episode because the entire episode they cast the leads to the side. You see Joel and Ellie for like 2 minutes, and it's all about Bill and him surviving in this bunker that he built under his house in the early days of the zombie outbreak. Frank, who just kind of stumbles into his backyard one day and who he takes care of, and their relationship blossoming. And it just follows them over the course of, I believe, maybe a decade and a half, 2 decades from when they met and just all throughout their relationship. And it is just like one of the best episodes of TV I saw this year, and I remember when reviews came out for The Last of Us before the show aired, every reviewer was like, "Get to episode 3, watch episode 3. It's one of the best episodes of TV this year," and I think I agree wholeheartedly. I think that Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman, what they do in that episode, it's I don't know if one episode can get you an Emmy nomination, but if it could, those are two performances there that should get them. And I think that the writing there is also excellent. But yeah, I think it does a lot of fun things. Well, fun might not be the right word, but a lot of interesting things with the Last of Us mythos, and sets up an interesting way to segue into season 2. So I
And it's
think
been already picked up for
good stuff
season
there.
two,
Correct. Yes, it has. Yeah, yeah. I know they're
which
just
is
now getting back to it post writer's strike, but
which is a damn miracle to get anything greenlit at Warner these days. I know you
yeah,
mentioned that
on a
like
streaming service.
like when you heard that HBO was involved that you were like, oh, this is going to be good? I kind of feel
Mhm.
differently about that now because they've renamed the whole platform Max.
Yeah.
They've kind of
That's,
they went from
yeah.
it's not TV, it's HBO to now it's Max.
Mm.
And
Last of Us
a
was like
lot
one of the last projects that came out under the like HBO Max branding. That was like right when that show was ending that they officially
yeah,
did
so
the
like
silly rebrand. But yeah.
I applaud David Zaslav for not pooping his pants and actually doing something smart in renewing The Last of Us, because basically everything else that's happened over there has just been pathetic and sad. You
Yeah.
know, so I struggle cheering on that company right now, but we've seen it in other categories, right? Mortal Kombat 1, which we sang its praises earlier, like it's almost like they succeeded in spite of the Warner relationship. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the case here too. There's very creative people that were working on the Last of Us project, and these things were greenlit before a lot of the bad decisions began being made, I think, over there. Uh, let's go to another nominee here. Castlevania Nocturne. What, the Netflix
Mhm.
series?
Yeah. Um Castlevania before they did Nocturne, wasn't there was another series that they had
Yeah.
on Netflix, right?
Yep.
Castlevania was a part of like not early video game adaptations, but like of the last half decade, it was among like the first that initial wave of really good ones. We were like, oh wait, okay, people can do know how to like do this and make them watchable and cool and through the source material.
And it had great
Um,
animation too. Like it was
oh yeah, mm,
artistically a very impressive series. And yeah, I think the Castlevania franchise, like we throw around the term Metroidvania a lot in our industry and like on social media and stuff, but I think people forget where the Vania comes from sometimes. And introducing this universe to a whole new group of people through Netflix, I think, has been pretty sweet. Uh,
mm,
yeah,
This was
and
also like
mhm,
a chapter that they absolutely needed to get right because the one thing that, like, the one section of Castlevania lore that a lot more fans know about is the Richter section. The that covers Castlevania Bloodlines, Dracula X, Symphony of the Night, and those are like three games that a lot of people have, like, they're well aware of. These characters are like some of the most beloved in all of Castlevania lore, and it would have been a travesty if they'd gotten this one wrong.
yep. And they didn't, luckily, and it has opened the door to other Netflix shows being announced. I think Pokemon has several things coming to Netflix now. Uh, yeah, there've been rumors of other things going on. Netflix and video games, that relationship continues to grow. Be it through their publishing arm, where they actually are making games available to Netflix subscribers on mobile devices, and then also just the IP that they're bringing over. Uh, I think wasn't there like doesn't Ubisoft have a show coming out? Captain
yep,
Laserhawk. So yeah, it does feel
yeah,
like
a
we're
couple.
entering a new era. Like you said, Donovan, like Castlevania is going to be one of those that you point to as like this was an early part of this new phase of Hollywood embracing video games. Because I think that not that the comic book well has run dry, but
Just an
uh,
untapped reservoir there, right?
yeah,
Like a lot of
N-
these
Nothing lasts forever.
franchises a lot of these franchises got their adaptations many years ago and they were bad and then just kind of sat there and it's like there's money to be made. Like these can be good. You can make a good adaptation of these properties and make people
for
happy and also a lot of dollars.
yeah, like for a long time it was movies turned into video game bad, video game
Yeah.
turned into movie bad. And I think
Mhm.
in the last 10 years, 15 years, maybe 20 in the case of, Arkham games or whatever, we've seen IP from Hollywood be made into actually very cool video games. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre that released this year is a good example of that. So seeing
Mhm.
the inverse, where Hollywood is starting to figure this out, we've seen the success of the Sonic movies. Yeah, I think now's the time. Video games have kind of reached this critical mass in general, casual gamers, all that stuff. And yeah, some of these are just great stories that need to be told.
Mm.
And then Five Nights at Freddy's.
Speaking of great stories, no. So here's the thing, right? With Five Nights at Freddy's, it's a franchise that I personally never got into. I watched some content on it back when it was first blowing up, but it's one that like I have so much respect for Scott Cawthon, who's like the guy who made the original indie game 2014 Five Nights at Freddy's, and then a million sequels, and he's partnered with bigger studios to adapt, and he's written books and comics and webtoons and all that about it. And they've been trying to make this movie for like 7 years. They've been talking about a FNAF movie since before I started writing here as an intern in 2017. And Blumhouse got involved a few years ago. And just over the years, whenever Jason Blum would drop crumbs of information about it for the fans, and they would go rabid for it. And then it finally arrived this year, and it's the highest earning horror movie of 2023, above new entries and franchise like Insidious and Scream and whatnot. And I think that's I hate it. I roll my eyes when people say, "Oh, this is a movie for the fans," but like watching Five Nights at Freddy's, that really is what that movie feels like. It's so deeply ingrained with the DNA of the games. There's a million Easter eggs and references. They remix a lot of that lore. They're throwing in characters from like the 6, 7 sequel spin-off in there that only certain people will know who that is if you study the lore and whatnot. They've got cameos from content creators that helped the game initially blow up in 2014. It feels like such a victory lap, I feel like, for Scott Cawthon and his team. I know he's credited as a screenwriter on this. Emma Tammy directed it, but I think that Blumhouse did a good job making a competent Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I don't think the movie's amazing. I think it's fine. It's like 7 out of 10 territory for me. But you look at, I believe it was last year, Nick Cage did a movie called Willy's Wonderland, which
Yeah.
was essentially, yeah, it was like a rip off of FNAF. They just beat him to the punch. It was the animatronics thing. His character was like a silent protagonist. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was
He
terrible.
doesn't say a
It
single
was,
word.
yeah, that movie was not good. And I was thinking, I was like, the FNAF movie just has to be better than that. You cannot let these people jack your style, beat you to the punch, and make a better bad movie. But I think FNAF is decent. We got Matthew Lillard in there, who gives a very hilarious, over the top performance. And I like that Josh Hutcherson's in there as MC. So
And this was
I
a
think it's
movie.
a decent one.
Isn't this a film that you guys did for the community night stream?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We did a movie night for it. Watched it on Peacock because they did day and date release. This came out in theaters and on Peacock the same day.
It still made
Which
money. Yeah.
it
And
still
it
made
still made
a
money.
yeah, it made $293 million at the box office, highest earning horror movie of the year. Will undoubtedly get sequels.
The key
At
is
the very least, like, I just appreciate that from a consumer's perspective, that I can sit on my ass and watch it at home the same night.
Yeah.
I felt for like a moment in time during the pandemic that we might have finally cracked Hollywood and they were going to just do this for everything. Because I think it was the Matrix film was like that.
Yeah,
And Dune.
Warner specifically did like a whole initiative over the pandemic where it was like 30 days or something, super short. They were going
Yeah.
straight to HBO Max out of theaters.
Space Jam 2. I think some of them went.
Yeah, that's one of
Yeah,
them.
no, that was real good, right? That was a really good one. But yeah. Yeah, but we can move on. Speaking of Peacock,
Yes.
Twisted Metal. It's I don't know what else
how
to
this
say.
snuck in. I really don't know how this snuck in.
I was gonna say Greg watched Twisted Metal. He didn't like it, so I don't know.
What makes me so mad about it was like it was that cusp. If they would have just taken it a little more seriously, like just a little bit more, it didn't have to be that much. Like it would have been great. But like it had to be a slapstick parody nonstop. And I remember how dark the second. And don't misconstrue like everything darker is better. No, just like minor spoilers. The tournament's not even mentioned till the end of the series. Like I thought they were gonna open with that, and I'm like, why didn't you open with the tournament? Like it was just. It misstepped. I don't know how it got nominated. It misstepped every step. I'm saying this as a Twisted Metal fan who grew up with the series. 1, 2, 3. I don't think we talk about 4, David. We talk about Black a little bit, and then it goes away, and that's okay. Like it had its moment. It was hot for a hot minute, and everyone liked it. One of the best-selling games on PlayStation.
Mhm.
You know,
it was fun as hell. It was different at the time they came
different
out.
fun, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of like random vehicle combat games that came out kind of after it. But yeah, the first Twisted Metal was interesting. The marketing behind it was pretty robust at the time. It definitely harkens like Donovan's PS1 retro.
Oh yeah, PS1
I
came out in the
hate you.
90s.
You're the
PS1's old as
worst.
hell.
Okay, so PS1's old as hell, and this franchise carried it. I just keep setting him up, David. It's been great, but yeah, like this. Yeah, this is a retro franchise now, and it needed a reboot. To Greg's point, I don't think that this made a whole lot of sense.
Here's the thing. These adaptations usually don't make sense because, to Greg's point, they're not taken seriously. But I do feel like a car combat game with these like bizarrely tricked out vehicles in a post-apocalyptic setting could really work if you expand in the right way. Like if you look at Mad Max Fury Road, that could almost be a car combat movie. So if you'd expanded the universe to have like these, I don't know, warring tribes with their cars destroying each other, and the cars mean a lot because it's not like you can just go jack one, that could work. But they just made it as silly as possible, and
it's also like this is one of those that you don't need an origin story. You should just drop us into the universe
in media res.
Like, yeah.
With the biggest
That's
thing,
what. Like there's an F-Zero anime out there that does exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I feel like this Twisted Metal series could have learned a little bit from that. And obviously one's animated, one's
explained. Like just go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think they could have done themselves a huge service if they did that.
It has your point to that. It has elements of that. Like to David's point, like there are some Sweet Tooth scenes that give you chills. You're like, wow, if they just went a little bit farther down this path, I'd be a lot more invested. But like they glance over it and it's right back to being funny, and it's just like, you know, like that doesn't work for me. And I think the biggest miss were two things: is the color correction for a post-apocalyptic war-driven world is way too vibrant. Like it just like and I think that's just it was a producer's point. He's like, I want everything bright and colorful. I don't want anything to look like Mad Max and that kind of tears you out of it. But the thing that they missed on that one was the cars. People should have their personality reflect on their cars, and it was a completely missed opportunity for everybody in the movie. I mean, like, that's not the whole point of the game was their cars were representing of those characters, and that was the thing they swung and they missed big time.
Yeah. Well,
like, why is his car special? Why is that car special? You know, like, why is her name this? Why is she like? None of that was answered. They were just like, here's the fan service, and you're like, but it doesn't make sense if you just throw it in. You got to have a reason. You know, like what makes his car special? Why is his better than any other car? They don't say any of that too. Like, why does Sweet Tooth have all this stuff? Like, they never really explain it. They didn't even use Outlaw. They had one of the Outlaws. But, like, they introduced a lot of new characters, which was ballsy. But, like, people want to see the characters in the Twisted Metal games. They don't want to have them be a side character. Outlaw was, like, a side character. She wasn't a main character. Most of the main characters were original characters, which is weird to me. Maybe they're saving it for season 2. I don't know. But
yeah, the fact that it got greenlit for season 2 is maybe they can address some of these problems. Because I don't think anyone's going to care if they have to retcon season 1 of this show.
He's gonna find out who his family is, though. It's all about family.
Oh, God.
Nobody's gonna vote for it, so
it's here. You know, like, anyone ever read Highlights, the magazine for kids?
No? I've heard of it. I don't think I've read it.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Do you remember Goofus and Gallant? No.
No.
There was a comic, and it was just to teach kids like how not to be an idiot. And there was one guy named Goofus and one guy named Gallant. And Gallant
okay, yeah, now I think it's coming back to me.
Twisted Metal is the Goofus of this nomination class.
And also, like, it has one of Donovan's favorite actors in it, right? But like,
Neve Campbell's in that thing, baby.
Neve Campbell's like, she's
Neve
like,
Campbell,
you got me for one day, and like that was it. Like, she's barely
Anthony
in it.
Mackie's in it too. Yeah, it's got a very good cast, actually. But yeah, sometimes you need more than that. The last nominee. Oh wait, no, sorry. There's 2 more nominees. I skipped one intentionally.
Conveniently.
Yeah, just kind of left it for last for some reason. Apple TV Plus, you know, everyone's favorite subscription service, released a full-length film about Tetris. But not the actual Tetris in-game universe. The licensing deal behind Tetris. Because this was the year that they made films about licensing deals. We had one about Air Jordan, right?
It's true.
Which did not feature Michael Jordan at all. But it was, if you wanted to watch,
they couldn't afford him.
He's in it, but they like it's like shoulders down.
Yeah, they couldn't
like,
afford him.
Like,
they wanted too much money, probably.
Oh,
He didn't. It wasn't a Fordham issue. It's
Or
why
Michael
would
Jordan.
they need him in the movie? It's not about
Yeah.
him. It's about the
It's about
guys
the
that
shoes.
worked at Nike. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the shoes, getting the shoe deal, the revolutionary nature of the shoe deal. Literally word for word. If you just search replace that movie for Air Jordan and put Tetris in it, you have
They're
this
very
movie.
similar. They're very
You
similar.
have this
yeah.
film. There are some really cringy moments in this film, most of which involve Nintendo. The portrayal of Yamauchi-san in this is just bizarre. I don't know if any of that is actually true. The chase scene that they shoehorned into it seemed a bit odd. But yeah, the actual story of the Tetris IP and how it fit into the Cold War is an interesting story.
Mhm.
And it's told pretty well. I thought the actors that they chose for the roles were good. They had a very good relationship with the Tetris company, so that as much of the details that could be accurate were obviously they embellished a little bit to make it a more entertaining film. But yeah, like seeing the origin story of just how Tetris became a Game Boy launch title is interesting.
One of the actors or the guys who was based on did an interview, and he had a great quote, which is like, he said a lot of it's greatly exaggerated. Is what he
Yeah.
said. I thought that was a great line because it's such a Hollywood thing. This is boring. Put a chase scene in there. You know what I mean? Like, it can't be a movie about education. It's just a documentary where people want to be entertained.
Yeah, I think the scenes in Russia are cartoony.
They're
Is the
very,
best way I can-
very like this is
like-
how Russia was, kids. Though.
Yeah, like it's like a cartoony version of Russia where I'm like, I don't know if this is real. So for like what it is, I don't know.
It's
I
still
really
interesting.
enjoyed
To
this
Austin's
movie.
point, it's still interesting nonetheless. It's an interesting story for the parts that are true and factual. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Tetris. It's clearly like in a take on that story of what happened, right? It's like kind of an adaptation of the story. When I'm watching it, it's like you have to suspend your disbelief at some point. Like I think it's a very cool, fun, like legal kind of espionage drama just about these people trying to get this rights to this thing they think is going to make a lot of money for their business. I think that's all fascinating. Uh, Watching it, I'm like, yeah, if I want like the true play-by-play Tetris story, I'm sure there's a book I could read about it. But I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was a very fun way to kind of retell and spin that story. Um, and also kind of encouraged me to look up more about Tetris because I didn't know anything about the people involved behind the scenes or any of that stuff. So I thought that was pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
how it came about and the difficulty of owning intellectual property in Russia as an individual citizen at the time. I think the story really does address some interesting things. But there's something about Apple TV Plus content that just makes me want to vomit. I can't put my finger on it.
You just won't give them a break, man.
No, it's not that. It's that Apple is more toxically positive than any other studio in Hollywood. Like, they just try to make things too cutesy and too nice and too safe and too family friendly. And
Watch Killers of the Flower Moon. That's
the
opposite of
one
family-friendly.
exception to what I'm saying. And what did they do with it? They didn't even release it on their streaming platform.
Yeah, Scorsese wouldn't let them do that. No chance.
What the hell is Apple TV Plus then? Scorsese won't let. Then why does it exist?
So they could win an Oscar.
What the hell are we talking about here? Is this about making money? Is this about making art? Is this about like what exactly is this giant soulless corporation doing in the film industry? And then
It's part of the streaming wars. Yoda told us a handful of years ago, begun the streaming wars have. And you know, they're all fighting for viewers, but they're also fighting for prestige, you know? They want to be like the buttoned up one that wins Oscars and puts out high quality product, you know. They want that reputation.
Who raise your hand. Are you subscribed to Apple TV Plus?
Damn it, David. Damn it, Donovan.
2 people.
You know why? It's
Why?
not that I'm subscribed. We still have like a free subscription, and once
There
it's
you go.
done,
Yeah.
Aang and I are like,
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
think-
drop it. You know?
Yeah, Like,
think
and
have
I
a
know
free
they're
subscription.
bundling it in other things too, and they're working with partners to make it more relevant. You know, they brought us MLS, yeah, MLS
Hey,
soccer
in
and
MLB Friday night baseball.
Friday night baseball. Everybody,
Oh,
like, what the hell is Apple TV Plus? And like the
It's
fact that you're like, they have a Scorsese movie. It's not on
Hey,
the platform,
they have
but they have a
Severance.
Scorsese movie.
They have Severance. That show's brilliant. Severance is great. I forgot about that show.
There
I
you
do
go.
like that show. The thing about Apple TV Plus, what I know, and then we can move on, but like it is like the occasional hit in the sea of misses that I've, at least for me. So like, whenever Severance season 2 drops, I'll definitely watch that. But like otherwise, it just, for me, it doesn't have a lot that I really want.
But they've tricked you into keeping it. So good on Tim Cook for that, at least, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I find that most of the things, and I have to mention this, what they did with Jon Stewart this year is messed
Yeah.
up. Like, and then they also censored Robert De Niro's acceptance speech at an awards show,
They did.
removing some things that he had to say. I think Apple TV and this Tetris movie are a perfect example of how dead Steve Jobs is. This shit does not happen. None of this happens under Steve Jobs at all. The concept of buying cool didn't exist at Apple. And now it's like all they do is just they're panhandling in Hollywood trying to score the next Scorsese film so that they
R.I.P.
cannot
Steve
put
Jobs,
it
you
on
would've
their
loved
streaming
Killers
service.
of the Flower Moon.
Look, the movie may be great. My problem was with the motivation behind the company funding these things. I just don't think they are artistically driven. I think that there's a profit motive here that they suck at. Like, they're not even good at making money off of this stuff. They've never broken out the profitability of this, because guess what? They're overpaying every one of these celebrities to be on these shows or to be in these things, or to make sure that you can get Lionel Messi to join MLS so your streaming service has some sort of relevance. I can't wait for them to buy Disney so that we can just have one family-friendly, monstrous service that everyone has to subscribe to. And then Pat McAfee will somehow also be on that platform. I can't wait for that. That's going to be hilarious, and that's coming soon to a theater near you. But there's one more nominee in this category, and boy, let's talk about it. This year was a huge year for Nintendo. Yes, Super Nintendo World came out. Yes, Tears of the Kingdom came out. Yes, Mario Wonder, Pikmin 4, F-Zero 99, all these amazing things. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. Everybody 1-2 Switch. Wario had a game at some point. But this was about the Mario movie. This entire year was about the Mario movie. The Mario movie outdid anyone's expectations outside of this guy. I knew this would happen. I've been talking about this for a fucking decade. It was the core part of my investment thesis in the early 2010s. It took 13 years to get here, but boy, did it feel good when I finally saw this film. A, I absolutely loved it. But B, it did what they wanted it to do as an adaptation of a video game. We have a lot of great nominees in this category and Twisted Metal. But why do you adapt your IP to film or TV? Why? Why do you do it?
Yep.
Right? To increase the awareness around your brand, right? Isn't that what you do? Did any of these other nominees cause some sort of a increase in demand for the video games that they were adapting? Like, I don't think anyone ran out and bought a new Twisted Metal game. I don't think there was a single Castlevania unit sold as a result of that Netflix show. Five Nights at Freddy's,
sold well.
Everyone already bought all the Five Nights at Freddy's things they could do. And Tetris, we've talked
Tetris
about
has already
it.
sold more copies
Yeah.
than most games ever will. That's whatever.
But the Super Mario Brothers movie introduced a whole new generation to the magic of the Mario universe. And it did it in a way where it appeals to everyone across every age group, every gender, every, whatever. If you're a fan of Luigi, there's something in this movie for you. If you're a fan of Bowser, boy howdy, are there things for you to enjoy in this. There's a song in this film that's now being nominated for an Oscar called Peaches. But ignore the critical acclaim for it. Peaches went viral this year in a way where every single kindergarten class was singing Peaches. There's this viral video of a kid doing it for his talent show, and the whole classroom starts singing with him. Jack Black and that song alone are a reason to put this in for best adaptation. Because, and I'm not going to talk about the other nominees because they deserve to be here. Maybe not Twisted Metal, but the rest of them deserve to be here. What's the story of Mario? The game?
Save the princess.
Right? What happens in the movie? Seems like the princess is kind of a badass in the film. They departed so much from the trite save the princess story because I don't care what the story of a Mario game is. I play the Mario game because the gameplay creates stories for me and my friends to talk about, hey, did this happen to you on this level? Or hey, I figured out, think back to the Mario Maker era where people were trying to shave seconds off of running my levels. The story of Mario games involves playing the games. It's not this narratively driven game that was really easy to just kind of copy and paste to this platform. They had to build a story, but they had to build a world. And Greg, we've talked about this a lot. The Super Mario Brothers movie does an amazing job of building the world. Every single scene in that film builds the universe, builds a character. And it is an origin story. It is an excellent origin story. It's an origin story that tips its cap to maybe the best adaptation of Mario before this, which was the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. The plot of this movie, getting sucked into the pipe and ending up in the Mushroom Kingdom, is the exact same plot from the show, which was this weird mashup of a cartoon and live action with Captain Lou Albano as Mario. Seeing them at least take some inspiration from these things while creating a new story has been outstanding to see. And the fan service in this film is not performative. It's not shoehorned in there. It's done in a way where it is a constant celebration of its fans. Where if you notice it, it's like good on you for noticing that. And this is a film I've watched like 50 times. And I keep seeing new things every time. The level of detail in this film, I think a lot of people glossed over because they see it, they write it off as a cartoon or whatever. There are over 150 different songs from the Mario universe referenced in this film. That's insane. The score alone is like one of the best-selling albums of the year. Ignoring Peaches, right? Just think about the rest of that original soundtrack is outstanding. And God, who made it? What's his name?
Who made
The composer?
Sorry. Like Koji Kondo or Brian Tyler the score?
Yeah, sorry, Brian Tyler. Koji Kondo obviously was working with Brian, but Brian Tyler took a risk and created this theme that had never existed in the Mario universe. But it tied all the other themes perfectly together. And I think that the just literally the soundtrack by itself is an amazing adaptation of this franchise. And it's just one element of it. The characters that they decided to use, right? Elevating Kamek and that relationship between Kamek and Bowser and how funny that is. Luigi, like leaning into who Luigi really is, right? Putting Luigi in this situation where he's all but doomed, right? The this movie did so much right that yeah, I'm stunned by it. And ignoring the fact that this is what the most commercially successful video game movie of all time,
By a lot,
that
yeah.
by a ton, and that this act like Nintendo has gone on multiple earnings results press releases and said we are seeing an increase in game and hardware sales as a result of this film. Speaks to it being a success from the perspective of being an adaptation. We have not seen this kind of fervor from a video game movie ever. It's never happened before. And I think that's why it really sticks out this year as the best adaptation. There's a lot more that we can say. Greg, I don't know if you want to chime in.
Yeah, so yeah, it also made a lot of good points, but I think more than just being popular and making sales on video games, like the movie didn't have a template. There was nothing for them. They had things to look to, sure, but Mario doesn't talk in any of the movies. Peach barely talks. They all make sounds and little noises. Toad doesn't talk. And they had to figure out a way to make this all work without harking back to anything that worked before. The only thing I would argue is that you can see, which is just interesting, if you watch the 93 movie, you see that Nintendo had a vision back then of what they wanted to do. And a lot of that trend, if you watch those movies, after watching that movie, I went back and watched the other older one, and they have visions. They know exactly what they want, but sometimes their timing is off, like the Power Glove.
Yeah.
The Wii before it was the freaking Wii in the 80s. Like, that's insane. Like, that hindsight is insane. But, this movie had no base. Like, it had nothing to, like, go on in terms of, like, how do we develop the character? How do they talk? What are the themes we use? Like, in terms of, like, filmmaking. There was none of that. Because it was all Mario jump on Goomba, Goomba gets squished. That was what they had to go with. And the fact that they were able to expand that world without harking back to themes or subtext or to other films that had done it before and have to do it completely from scratch, and they were able to nail it out of the park, is just an accomplishment unto itself.
But at the same time, Greg, while there wasn't a outline to write the story on, they did these things where you're like, oh my god. The opening scene where Mario and Luigi are rushing to their first plumbing appointment, you're literally you're watching them run through level 1-1 of the original Super Mario Bros. Game to a T, pixel perfect, where the boxes are, where Mario's jumping. It's little things like that are strewn all throughout this film that take what you're saying, which is like absolutely true. They built a story out of thin air, but at the same time, it never felt foreign to the universe. And we got something cool. We got to see Mario and Luigi's life in Brooklyn, which goes back to the Super Show, right? Goes back to that film, that these guys were plumbers. They were having an awful day when they got sucked down into the Mushroom Kingdom. And I think the story ends up actually being pretty great.
And good, Donovan.
I was going to say that I think Illumination also deserves a good amount of credit here, because I think this movie looks stunning. Like, the animation on it, despite Mario having the flattest butt in the history of animation, I think it looks great. The character design, the stitching on the M on his hat, all the characters look fantastic. I think that while the score is excellent, the movie does one thing musically that had me scratching my head with all like the needle drops, where we get like the Take on Me and a bunch of like random 80s radio hits, where I'm like, man, I was like, Brian Tyler like put everything into that score. I was like, you could cut all those needle drops and just let his score play, and I think those scenes are better there.
Yeah,
but
you bring up a really good point. Holding Out for a Hero coming on during the training montage is very odd. They could have used any one of a billion different Mario songs in that scenario. And then the other one that really stuck out to me was Take on Me being used in Donkey Kong Country. There's so much good Donkey Kong music that could have been used in that scenario, or kart music, right? So I did find both of those to be kind of odd, but then I'm reminded that this is a Hollywood movie, and it's meant to appeal to a very broad base. I also wonder if Miyamoto just really likes some of those 80s songs.
You can.
Oh
you
my
can
God,
see,
Ozzy has joined this debate at the very last second.
You can
We
see
are
Asif,
talking best adaptation, Ozzy.
You could see
Right there.
the Hollywood interference. Like Nintendo did the Nintendo thing, but then Nintendo also had to trust Hollywood or Universal for certain things that they didn't have any knowledge of, and it shows. There's a track on, and it's been shown on Reddit, multiple groups, of the Donkey Kong track that was supposed to play there, but instead it was Aha. Like that was clearly a Universal call. You know what I mean? Like the casting, clearly a Universal call, like something Nintendo's not familiar with.
It's one of those decisions
Yeah.
that there was definitely an analyst somewhere in Universal that was like, oh, if we put these in here, like this will really
2
resonate
points
with
on box
a lot
office
of
if we.
like people.
There must have been like some equivalent of SEO done for like,
Yeah.
you gotta have Holding Out for a Hero in this, because it's really
a great
funny to
song.
me. Two video game movies came out in the same year, and both of them feature that song, except Apple TV Plus couldn't afford the good version by Bonnie Tyler. They had some.
On an aside, can we put a moratorium on that song, please? Like, I don't want to hear it anymore.
Especially
Also,
because
Shrek
the
2 was to
best
the
use
side.
of the best use of it in film is not in a video game movie. It's in Short Circuit 2. Like, leave it there.
Shrek 2.
No, Short Circuit 2 is better than Shrek 2. I don't. We're not even gonna get into this. But like,
That's a whole other debate.
yeah, we have a whole other debate there. And I'll come on to Pop Goes to Culture to talk to you about Short Circuit 2 someday. But yeah, like, I agree. Those things did stick out. But my point is that Brian Tyler created a theme that comes out at multiple times throughout the film and ties these other Mario songs together perfectly. Like, that is
That
awesome.
medley brings it hits me right here. It really
It's
does.
so
That
good. That medley at it's the best credits ending. Like, it's just very good. The credits scene, like, it's not very often that I'll sit there and watch credits over and over again. That is one of those where when the movie's over, you leave it on. Going back to crediting Illumination, you're dead right. This is the best the Mario universe has ever looked. So much so that I was worried how they were going to make a new Mario game after this. Because I'm like, Odyssey doesn't look that great now.
Would they be like, oh man, if they made a new Mario game, it'd have to look totally different.
And then we get Wonder.
Yeah.
And now Wonder's building out the universe even more, right? I wonder if we're going to see Prince Florian in the future in a film. But the world building that occurs in Mario, in the Mario movie, is like just outstanding. The amount of love for Nintendo fans is just exploding out of every scene in this film. I pointed out, we talked about Mario's bedroom earlier. Punch Out Pizzeria it's just the world of nostalgia. The wall with all the different Punch-Out boxers, the Jumpman cabinet, Giuseppe, who is basically the original Mario, voiced by Charles Martinet. The fact that Charles Martinet is the voice of Mario and Luigi's dad in this film.
And this is the last thing we're going to hear him in.
This is his swan song in the Mario
is his
universe.
Goodbye, and that's another emotional beat for me.
It's so damn special, Ozzy, that he got to voice the voice of Mario. The first time we ever saw, the voice of Mario's dad. The first time we meet Mario's dad, that's Charles Martinet's voice. But also that first scene where they show that commercial and they're like, was that too much? And he's like, it's perfect. Like, there's so many little things in this film that just make me as a Mario fan and as a Nintendo fan insanely
And unlike
happy.
Asif, I didn't even hate Seth Rogen in this.
Yeah, I love this movie in spite of Seth Rogen laugh. And the Seth Rogen laugh makes me die a little bit.
Seth Rogen laugh was perfectly placed.
It was
the
placed
best
well.
place to put it.
I think that Jack Black's performance trumps any of the weaknesses in the voice acting cast.
I was a little worried about Jack Black, but he nailed this role. He really did.
They're not weak. They're just fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with them, and there's nothing stand out about them other than Jack Black. Like, Chris Pine was fine.
Chris Pratt.
Yeah, whatever.
Wrong, Chris.
He's you need a name on the poster. That's what he was.
I thought Charlie Day was great for Luigi just
was.
because
Exactly.
Charlie Day can hit those high notes on Always Sunny, and that's what I heard there. Like, it's perfect.
Also, Key was an excellent Toad. Like, I know we haven't really heard Toad, but I thought he was wonderful and funny.
their introduction where like Mario's like, "Is this a dream?" And Toad just hits him in the side with his stick. It's like, did that hurt? I love that introduction of him.
Yeah, and just later on where he's like, "We're best friends." Like, Toad is delightful. How Toad gets Mario into the castle where he, busts out the skillet.
I really enjoyed the banter with Mario and Peach too. Like I thought their dynamic was great.
He's not important.
She has some good lines too. That
She
people
is
forget about some
hilarious.
of her stuff, but she has some really funny moments too.
And also just talk about the writing of Peach. I love that Peach is this badass female character who's like not goofy like Mario. Like Mario is the punchline for most of this film, right? But then at the very, in the middle and the end, she's, after that training season, like, you just don't know how to quit, right? And that is like his weakness, but also his strength, right? And I absolutely love how Mario is the punching bag of this film for so much of it, right? It that scene that's essentially Smash Brothers at the Ring of Kong. I love just how much of an underdog Mario is in this film. I absolutely love that, and that it is a good origin story. We get to see him eat a mushroom for the first time and hate it. And I love that Miyamoto is the one who put that detail in. He was like, have him hate mushrooms. Like, just that little idea, those little things are what make this movie so special. And yeah, the Rainbow Road scene, you want to talk about
I
visuals?
I love that scene so much.
It's perfect. And the jump that Mario does to evade the blue shell early on in that race, that's a skip from the N64 game. Like, pixel perfect skip from the actual game being translated to that. I fucking love stuff like that.
I do love that people go, we didn't need an origin story for the Blue Koopa shell. Yes, we did. Shut up.
Hell yeah, we did. And he's like, second shot of the movie, you see him. There's like little things where you like see him early on and you're like, who the... Wow. Because when that happens, that's a great reveal at the end of that race when he's like, you think you can... he's all like Terminator, basically. Love that. I love despite Chris Pratt and Seth Rogen not being my two favorite voice actors in this film, the relationship between those two is excellent.
Their banter was good. I like their dynamic.
Yeah, and the whole like while they're on Rainbow Road, and it's like, a princess would never date you, like stuff like that. Just I love it.
Seth Rogen's best moment is where Mario is telling him, he's like, "Well, my dad thinks I'm a screw up too," and Seth Rogen goes, "Well, he's right."
Yeah, when they're inside of the fish. Yeah, absolutely love it. It's a film that wastes zero time.
It's wide short. There's no filler. There's no bull. Everything moves the story forward, which is great.
No BS.
In this era of 2.5-hour movies that are like 30 minutes too long, like this got to the point and
And cameo
in and
porn.
out.
Yeah, but yeah, the
To Asa's point, there are a ton of stuff hidden in that movie, but none of it distracts. Like, it's not like, hey, look, there's a superhero that is coming into Batman movie for 2 minutes. Like, that distracts. You know what I mean? None of the stuff in the Mario movie distracts. It's all there and has a place.
Good example of that is how they use King Boban, right?
Yeah, he's just there. He doesn't distract. He's just there. Yeah.
He's there, but then during the fight, his fuse goes off.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, you see him maybe, for 4 seconds of the entire film, but...
Yeah, before he blows up.
Yeah. And then, like, just even, like, bringing gifts to the wedding, the whole concept of the wedding, I love that, like, that is one trope from the series where Bowser is kind of in love with Peach, or infatuated with Peach, to the point where they sing that song.
They flew a little too close to the sun when they gave Peach the ice flower and they turned her into Elsa. I'm like, okay, now you're getting a little too cute for your own good. But that was just like a couple, like about a minute. So
yeah.
Whatever.
And then the ending fight, where Mario's he's got his ass kicked and he's back in Punch Out Pizzeria. Yeah, that whole scene it takes a lot from anime. There are several anime references to like Evangelion in that scene that I think a lot of people don't pick up. There's also some foreshadowing at the very beginning scene. You know where they're in that fancy house and the dog is in the bathroom with them. Luigi has to like push the mirror back onto the wall because water's shooting all over the place. And obviously he ends up saving the day, spoiler alert, by saving Mario from Bowser's fire. And then the way that they animated the kicking animation at the very end of the movie, that's straight from an anime as well. Like there are nods to other franchises in this movie that are outstanding. I like that we got to see that universe that exists when you go in a pipe in a Mario game. I think that's the first time we had ever seen anything like that. Luma, just whatever the hell Luma is in this movie, I think it's hilarious. That
He's all of us.
That Luma is in the film implies something. I just a couple of moments that took me back visually. That fire flower field, that whole scene where Peach is talking about how many universes they are, absolutely love that moment. Yeah, it's a feel-good film. It makes me feel good every time I watch it. And yeah, it's something that I've been anticipating this for so long. And usually when something like that happens, there's a lot of hype and it ends up kind of disappointing. You can say a lot of things about this film. It certainly didn't disappoint. And yeah, I don't know. I could go on for another 5 hours about this if you'd like. But yeah, absolutely love this film. It came at a time in the year where I desperately needed something to look forward to. And it was there as this kind of like finish line for something. And yeah, having it come out when it did was hugely important.
And then since I know, I kind of have a feeling for the room based on the Slayer, people are going to like vote for The Last of Us, which is fine. But I also want to point out that while The Last of Us is some of the best cinematic drama television I've ever seen in a long time, the fact of his post-apocalyptic world is not brand new. Like, we've seen the themes of human survival, instability, and romances in multiple movies and television, like The Walking Dead, Zombieland, Z Nation. And like those themes are great because all the flavors of the zombie movies are slightly differently how the zombies work. You know, the remake of Dawn of the Dead, it's all different, but it all comes down to human nature and what you do to survive. And that's the theme of The Last of Us. And it takes it very personally, but that would be the only argument I have against The Last of Us winning this category, is because that type of themes and those subject matter have been explored to death. No pun intended.
Greg, I think you have misread the room if you think that everybody's about to vote for The Last of Us.
Oh no, I'm just making sure. I just wanted to give, because the last couple of weeks we've had some inner debates about The Last of Us and Mario.
Like,
so
I've intentionally avoided saying anything negative about any of these other ones, except for Apple TV Plus, because what the fuck is Apple TV
Twisted
Plus?
Metal.
But,
I did.
Twisted
Am I
Metal.
I'm the only one here that didn't hate Twisted Metal? I thought
Yes,
Twisted Metal was
Ozzy,
fine.
yes.
You
Yeah.
are.
We've
David,
had this discussion once.
Yeah.
But I will say this. The Last of Us is a narrative-driven game. So much so that everyone loves it. Like, it's a story that most gamers love, right? And outside of episode 3 of this season, they stay very... And I would argue episode 1 also kind of deviates from the game. Because you get to know Joel's daughter a little bit more than you would have in the game.
But the last episode is such a note for note follow of the game that it created a great discourse moment where people on social media were just like, see, if you kill the nurses, you're a monster and the show says so.
Yeah, but so much, like, I think being note for note, yeah, there's one way to judge an adaptation and say that this is cool. But I think it's a lot harder to take a game that's not known for its narrative at all and make something that actually resonates with people beyond fans of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that it wasn't exactly note to note. I really liked it because Donovan made a lot of good points about how they do expand things. And I do think also, if you're right, that there are two different types of adaptations. That I think the Mario Brothers movie is adapting a universe and having to figure out how to do that in a way that makes for a compelling story. I will say that Sony and Naughty Dog planned for this. Like I looked it up just to make sure. They did say a huge uptick in game sales after The Last of Us hit. And this is a coordinated effort. Like they remade The Last of Us last year, the show hit this year, the remaster of 2 is coming out last year. They're going to benefit huge from this, but they are two different types of adaptations.
And also,
for sure.
Sony entering the film and TV space is nothing new.
No.
They are very accomplished in both spaces. Where Nintendo hasn't made a movie since 1993.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing like, hey, Sony made something cool on television. Yeah, no shit. That's what they do. Nintendo actually partnering with Illumination and doing something that is wildly successful. And, I have to bring it up. Critics got it wrong. Critics shat all over the Mario movie. And the fans loved it. So, when you're looking at an adaptation, whose opinion matters more? A bunch of stodgy people who are invited to some Hollywood bullshit event? Or the actual fans who fucking rent out a movie theater in Canton, Ohio to watch it?
I feel like we need to be careful with that argument because that would get used against us a lot.
To be
I know.
I was also thinking this.
to play devil's
What
advocate, the
people say about
Sony's had a
us.
lot of misfires too. They've did like what was the
Oh.
Heavenly Sword and Ratchet and Clank. They did a lot of adaptations.
I was
that just-
about
may-
to bring up Ratchet and Clank.
I may be critiquing game reviewers too with that
Yeah.
statement. No question.
I was about to bring up the Ratchet and Clank movie as an example of what happens if you try and go too close to the source material. Because it was fine, but when I watched that movie, I was just like, this is nothing I can't get out of the game. And that's part of the big challenge in adapting something like this is you can't make it too close to the game where it's like, you might as well just pop in the game. But I think they struck that right balance with the Mario movie.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling this isn't the end of Nintendo making films now, right? We
obviously
now know,
not. We got a Zelda
now-
movie coming.
We now know there's a Zelda movie coming, but I think there might be another Mario movie.
Nice and
announced.
slow.
I'm just gonna go on a limb
Oh,
and guess.
Nice and
Come on, we
slow.
saw it through the
Easy-
credits.
ease
There's
into
going to be
it.
another Mario movie.
I'm gonna go on a limb and just guess that we might get another Mario movie.
You know that Universal kicked that door down. Was like, okay, here's our plans for the next 9 movies. They're like, no. We'll
So
let
if
you
there
know when
was a
we're
Last
ready.
of Us, if there was a Last of Us effect, David, it did not move the share price. Is kind of my point. What's happening at Nintendo is a huge transformation in the company's philosophy around their IP.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different level of openness with their IP that didn't exist during the Yamauchi era and was very, very hidden during Iwata's reign as president of Nintendo. He was very careful with the IP.
I can't wait for some of us to come back in 2028 for the 2028-2029 Shacknews Awards, and we're debating the Kirby movie.
Yeah. Or the Kirby TV show or whatever. But yeah.
Kirby's had a TV show, which was great.
Right back at you, man. But yeah, we could sit here and continue to talk about these for a very long time, but I think we should probably get to voting. Unless someone has something else they want to say.
Any other year, I would have considered. I would have given it to Castlevania because Castlevania is amazing, and instead, it's the biggest third wheel on this list.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it.
What wheel is Twisted Metal then?
Don't.
The spare tire.
We're voting.
Flat tire.
We're voting now.
Sorry. I had to work the body one more time. Yeah, because isn't that another Sony IP? Anyway.
It's the wheel that comes off the car and flies out the window when I'm trying to drive.
Okay, so let's vote. David.
Mario.
Donovan.
The Last of Us.
I'm gonna vote for the Mario movie. Surprise, surprise. Greg.
Mario.
EJ.
Mario.
Ozzy.
Mario.
Steve.
Do I even really have to say?
Steve's like Twisted Metal. It was him.
As-
He was the
As
one.
the host of the Steve Tendo Show, Monday through Wednesday on Shacknews Twitch, starting up again next year. Mario movie. Let's see what our
Mario
absentee
movie.
ballots had to say about this. Bill votes for The Last of Us. Denny votes for The Last of Us.
I think Sam might also be Last of Us.
You are incorrect.
Really?
Sam has the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
Twisted Metal. Oh yeah.
We don't need to keep kicking Twisted Metal while they're down.
But it's so much fun, Ozzy.
It is pretty
If he
fun.
did, I'm glad he wasn't here.
I will say this: the one thing the Twisted Metal movie did
Show.
give us is that I think Samoa Joe should be allowed to act in more things because that guy's amazing.
Yes. I'm stoked for him in Suicide Squad next year.
So yeah, 7-3. Wasn't even that close. But all these are good nominations. I think it's very difficult to compare The Last of Us HBO series, which is like what, over 10 hours of content, to the Mario movie, which is like a faster paced 90 minutes thing. I think those two things are not really easy to compare on an apples to apples basis.
I would even say that it's not even like 1 and 2, but it's like 1 and 1A. Like they're both phenomenal.
Yeah. And we are definitely entering an era where video game adaptations aren't just defaulting to being terrible. There's a chance that they're pretty outstanding and can shape the future.
That's part of why we have this category now.
Yeah. And this trend of films being adapted, of video games being adapted to film and TV, it's just getting started because Apple TV needs to make more stuff for people to pay for. And yeah, Netflix is out there with a big chunk of cash, and everyone just saw how the Mario movie performed. Before that, we saw the success of the Sonic films. So yeah, like the financial success of these things are hugely important for why they're going to continue forward. And also just from running Shacknews, boy, if the Mario movie tanked, I don't know if we're sitting here talking right now, you guys. I really don't. So, making a bet years ago that this would eventually play out, it certainly did help when running a website that, needs funding in 2023. So, yeah, the Mario movie means something to this company in a different kind of way. But yeah, very excited to say that we're done. This was actually our last deliberation of the year. But yeah, the Pop Goes the Culture Best Adaptation, Best Video Game Adaptation of the year goes to the Super Mario Brothers movie.